Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table A Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello and welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. This is continuing our little series of talking to, let's just put it out there, young women who you're going to hear more of in the future because they're just that good. They really are. Our guest today is Jocelyn Correa. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I'm from the Midwest, so I could either be Chicago or I could sound like I'm from southern Mississippi. So I just never know sometimes my pronunciations go a little bit haywire. So Jocelyn is a recently licensed land surveyor in the state of California. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this stage in your life being a licensed land surveyor?
Sure. So when you say recently, it was very recently. I just passed in October and found out, I think in early December that I passed. So still doesn't feel different yet, but good to have that behind me at least. So for how I got started, I actually went to school for architecture, took a ton of drafting classes in high school and college, learned AutoCAD, and then realized that architecture just wasn't going to work for me, specifically in my area. It wasn't going to be a good fit. So just by chance, one of the local counties was hiring for a cadastral mapper in the assessor's office. I knew really nothing about cadastral mapping. I'd laid out some lots and done plot plans and that sort of thing in AutoCAD, but no mapping per se. I went ahead and applied anyway, just, taking a shot. And I think I was the only one that applied that knew AutoCAD. So knowing nothing about the job itself, I still wound up getting that position. I had an amazing mentor there, another female, actually. Her name was Edna. And she was so patient with me, taught me so many of the basics, the PLSS system, why the assessor office even needs to do cadastral mapping and track parcels for tax purposes. Really just the basics of survey and mapping in general.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know how I got so lucky to fall into that type of position, but it really it combined the history side for me. I love history. And so just the excitement of putting together, that boundary puzzle, looking into junior, senior rights, resolving those boundaries was just, it was something I didn't know I would love so much. And having a good mentor just really helped feed that. So after that, I was hooked. I didn't know that I wanted to be a land surveyor necessarily. I thought I was pretty happy being a cadastral mapper. Moved around a little bit between Kings County and Tulare County here in California. And then wound up at a survey firm about 6 years ago. And I just haven't looked back. I found my path once I got here for sure.
Well, that's fantastic because, and I'll be honest with you, this is and for those listeners that'll catch the other one with our earlier podcast with Cassandra Quintal from Maine, this is fantastic because she got her start working for an attorney, looking at abstracts, looking at titles, looking at all of these things. So I'm just kind of blown away that typically the typical surveyor comes in with third guy on a crew or second guy on a crew and out beating through the woods, whatever, or pounding stakes or what. you and Cassandra both started out on the legal side, on the mapping side, on the abstract side, and that part kind of bit you and grabbed you into it. Well, that's fantastic. I like that there's more than one way to get into surveying, and that's part of what we'll talk about, all the fantastic things that we can do with surveying. But all right, so newly licensed, and what is it about your day-to-day work that you really like? What are some of your favorite things that you like to work on? If you get up in the morning, I'm going to work on this project today, and it puts a little more spark in your step. What are those things?
Yeah. So I still really love the mapping and the boundary side. I don't think that'll ever go away. But working for a survey company specifically, I really enjoyed being out on, collecting the topo, doing the boundary work in the field, drafting it in the office, and then pushing that final map through recording. That start to finish process is really motivating for me. The pieces are all fun independently, but I really love that, just getting close to finishing something and then seeing it being built, helping with the construction staking. I think that's definitely the most motivating and most exciting. This is the start to finish part.
Very nice. Is there anything that you go, oh, I don't want to go do that today? I know, I'll be honest with you. One of my favorite things, and people just cringe, I like doing level circuits. I like that. I like running level circuits and knowing, I've got to close this thing. Some people just hate that. I mean, what's something you go, not that you hate doing those things, but something you go, I don't really care for that.
So dipping manholes is just not high up on my list.
There you go. You win. That's true.
I don't think anyone enjoys that though. That's probably a pretty common dislike. Other than that, I mean, the heat in California, Central California, it can be tough for field work.
Sure. Well, and I guess that segues into a small tangent of a question. All the wildfires that have gone on on the West Coast, especially California. I mean, were you involved? I mean, were you anywhere close to any of that and having to deal with any of that?
So we have offices that cover most of the state, and our Clovis office specifically was quite close to the Camp Fire, and we haven't done survey work yet. I think it's coming. We're working on some UAV LiDAR proposals to help them just figure out what needs to be done to maintain and repair the road system up there. But our office did work on some SWIP type. I hate to say project, but because it was so huge. But really trying to protect the area, make sure that we don't have the mudslide complications once it starts raining and snowing and impacting that burned area. It's scary what that can do when there's no vegetation there.
Right.
So we haven't touched it with survey yet, but our company has definitely been working more on the engineering side with the fire situation.
Sure. Well, and for those listeners that don't realize what has to happen now, because of the places where the fire has taken place and all of the bad material, the burnt material that's on top, that it's usually anywhere from 1 to 2 feet of the surface has to be taken off to be able to, and that material has to be disposed of. And within that material is a whole lot of monuments. So it's going to be interesting to see how we come back from that in places where we're going to just strip out all the monuments, and we're trying to get either some legislation or find some funding on the national level to help California, Oregon, Washington, and all those places. Right. So yeah, I can't imagine living there and being in part of that. That's just got to be it's watching a train wreck.
Watching a train wreck, but I mean, when you go up to that area too, it's kind of beautiful in its own way. Even being burned, I don't know. It's sad, but also just, it, makes you appreciate nature and just everything that can happen.
You bet.
It was an experience going up there for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of appreciate places you've been, any fond places this early in your career, or places you've surveyed and just stood there and took it all in and went, wow, what a place to survey. I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah. We've had some UAV work in the foothills, and it happened to be during the spring, so everything was green and wonderful. And I think just being out, most of our work, my work specifically, has been done in the valley. A lot of farmland, a lot of subdivision work. So getting up in the foothills was really nice. And then I love UAV work, so that just kind of topped it for me. But yeah, anything out of the norm, I guess. I don't have one specific job necessarily, but sure. I love being out in the foothills. It's wonderful.
Very nice. Well, I tell you what, that your comment there gives me a quick little segue. In talking about UAVs, for most of the older surveyors, us gray hairs that are dealing, our company, some of us embrace UAVs as just like we did robots and GNSS and so many other things. Mm-hmm. As somebody that's newer to the profession and seeing what we can do with UAVs, how do you approach a job now knowing you've got that tool in the toolbox with your crews, with your team, to have this available data to be able to do so much more with using that UAV? Right.
So we've taken a few different approaches with our UAV program. My senior management team was amazing enough to kind of let me make our UAV program I always call it my baby. But they just said, we want to look into this technology for surveying and, kind of take it and run with it. And they let me do that. And I think we realized right off the bat that it is another tool that's not appropriate for every job. So we can fly quite a bit of topos with certain UAVs. But then there's other jobs where, we take a smaller drone out and we just get a nice background image. And we're not using it for elevation data. So even if it's not a tool for our typical survey data, we're still using them on a lot of jobs.
Exactly.
And we have found that they do work best in the hands of our field surveyors. So a lot of we're pushing our field staff to be licensed pilots also. And I've been impressed with the types of projects we wind up being able to use it for, and just how robust our data set winds up being. And the clients always love the photos. So,
well, that's what I always, early on when we were pushing that same initiative as well, that I got to be with clients that were just still a little bit iffy on spending a little bit extra money for this background photo, and it was the old saying is picture's worth 1,000 words. I think for what, and you explained it quite well. I mean, even just for a background photo, it's worth $1 million. It really is. So, and it's, and that's part of what I also try to push across to our clients as well, is this survey is a snapshot in time. And having that photo as that background helps establish it's a snapshot in time, and it's fantastic. Right. So I'm glad to see that you've been able to take it. And I guess that's the other part I wanted to just comment on, is that kudos to your company for listening to you and saying, I want to do this, I want to take this on, because unfortunately, that's still going to be a challenge for our profession going forward, is the decisions and the purse strings of the older generations that's running these things. You are our future, and we're listening to what you have to say on where we're going and how we're doing some things. So kudos to them for letting you just take it and run with it, because obviously you've shown the value of it.
I can't speak highly enough about, just how willing they are to, let our staff drive the technology. I think it's really important.
That's great. It really is. All right, so newly licensed. Um, any short-term goals? Anything you would like to try to? I mean, you've checked that box for the license. What's next on Jocelyn's short-term goals?
Short-term goals. I do plan on chasing my CFEDs. I'm going to try to sit for the June exam on that one. That'll be my first time taking it, so we'll see. And then I really enjoyed the photogrammetry side. So I'm thinking maybe not short term within the next few months, but within the year pursuing a certification there.
Oh, very good. See, I'm telling you, people, these youngsters, they've got their goals set. They're chasing these things down, which is awesome. And you know what? Stand back and get out of their way. Let them get all of these things. I guess looking back at your day-to-day operations now, I mean, what's a typical crew for you guys, for your company now? I mean, is it strictly GPS with a little bit of terrestrial robots, UAVs? I mean, what are all the tools that are at the hands of your crews right now, and what you would go out and use?
Right. So we do a lot of construction staking and a lot of design level topos. So still doing a lot of total station work. GPS, definitely a staple. I think those two are used daily by our crews. UAV, I mean, like I said, we're flying a lot of jobs for the aerial photo, and I think we're probably doing topos, UAV topos, at least once a week. Of course, weather permitting, right?
Yes.
It's a rainy week, that won't happen. But for my office specifically, if I were to go out in the field, it would be total station or GPS work.
Sure.
And pretty split. I wouldn't say we're all or mostly GPS or mostly total station. It's a nice mix.
Well, and the reason I ask that is that there seems to be some talk out there that people want UAVs to basically replace a lot of stuff, similar to what GPS, GNSS did back in the 2000s. And so that that's going to replace everything. Robots are going away. And I guess, that was the reason I asked that question, is that there's still, I mean, you still got to carry that whole toolbox with all of those tools.
It's another tool for sure. But like I said earlier, it's not appropriate for every job. And UAV will never put construction stakes in the ground or dip a manhole. So
no, not at all. Moving inside now, we're talking about so much more data that's coming at us now, and it's all geospatial data. Being part of, I'm somewhat of the new guard coming in, dealing with all of this and the software that goes along with it. What types of things are you looking at for quality control and being able to really look at and see and manipulate that data, and really kind of truthing what your crews are doing for you on a daily basis?
Right. So with our UAV data specifically, we do make sure all our projects adhere to the NSPS standards. So we're out there doing the check shots. If we're extracting any elevation data, we have GCPs. So it's, since our company had quality control plans in place already, it wasn't a big workflow change for us.
Great.
We're using Pix4D for our post-processing, and of course that software spits out quality reports. So we're checking the GCPs there, and then once we get the data into CAD, we do our self-check on our check shots. So that way we're not, manipulating the data, or it's a completely unbiased check.
Nice.
So I don't feel like it changed how we're doing things. It was just a different workflow to check UAV data specifically.
That's perfect. That's awesome, because I think that's one important step that people are not, companies and surveyors are not, they're just
Yep.
thinking that the surveyor, that the software is doing its work and this and that, and
Right.
it can lead people down a bad road if you're not paying attention to what
It
you're looking
can.
at.
I mean, we just saw it this week. Pix4D will default to your output coordinate system, and if you don't check and make sure that's right, it'll shift. It'll do a shift, and so then you get it into CAD, and it's like, why am I 1.4 something feet off vertically? Like, this isn't right. But because we have those checks in place, we were able to catch it fast. So it's, I mean, one small setting being wrong can really mess up your data.
Yep. See, I'm telling you, she sounds well versed for her age. Holy cow, she's a seasoned veteran here, which is awesome. I guess part of the other questions that I have in coming up through the ranks and being a female surveyor in a male dominated field, what positive challenges have you had? I mean, dealing with fellow surveyors out in the field, dealing with crew members. I mean, I'm hoping you're going to tell me that they've been very respectful and very
Yeah. I hear a lot of women struggle, and I feel blessed that I haven't had that problem. I've only been with QK for 6 years, and so I don't know if I just lucked out with an absolutely amazing company, or if it's not quite as bad as sometimes it's made out to be. I can't speak to that since I've only had the easy route, I guess. But I haven't had any horrible experiences. I've had just some amazing mentors that, speak up for me, I think, too. So I think I've had it probably on the easier side, honestly.
Good. Well, and I guess that's once again, that's kudos to the company and creating the good culture, creating the good processes, and really wanting to put out a good product and take care of their people. So,
right.
Like I said, kudos to them.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna pick you up and we're gonna take you into a high school math class to tell students about surveying and geomatics and all the toys we get to play with. What do you say to them? What do you tell a young group of students like that?
So I actually have been working with one of the local high school geometry classes.
Yay.
I feel like that's the best time to catch students and just expose them to surveying. I didn't know what land surveying was when I was in high school. So just explaining a little bit about the history side, but then also applying the math, because even kids that maybe don't like the math, maybe their interest is piqued when I show them how, triangles work with photogrammetry, or, how we can do our level circuits, right? Like that's the math they're learning in class, and it's basic enough that it's not intimidating. But then they can see, like, I can do a job with this, because how many high school students feel like they go through their math class and like, I'm going to use math someday? I know I didn't. I was good at math, but I can't say that like I wanted to do that every day.
Right.
But showing them that, there's a job out there that uses this, it is important to learn it. And a lot of times the software does a lot of the math for us now, but we still need to know the concepts behind it to make sure it's working appropriately. And it's being used properly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's easy to push that button and think, okay, well, what did it do?
Yeah, you better know what it's doing.
Yes, exactly. And I used this simile the other day, and it seems to kind of have stuck, that we've got so many young people coming up through the ranks now that are looking for careers, that just because somebody is coding and putting together apps, that doesn't mean that they don't know what process is going behind the scenes, whatever. Just because somebody is pushing a button on a data collector now, they still need to know what the geometry is doing, what the trigonometry that's applied. And
You're not going to catch that mistake if you don't understand the math behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you spoke very well to that. So that's perfect. Let's talk about the Young Surveyors Network, and it was fun to see you the other night on a Young Surveyors social, which
Yeah.
I guess that's part of what I want to talk about, is that being part of a younger generation now. It's mostly the older generations that wanted to do associations and chapters and group meetings and monthly meetings, quarterly meetings and things.
Sure.
Obviously, the younger generations don't necessarily want to meet like that, but obviously you still want to be social. You still want to interact with your peers.
Right.
So what do you see as a good way to be able to do exactly that and interact with your peers and get to meet fellow surveyors from around the world?
Yes. So, not necessarily around the world, but our local CLSA chapter actually has, since we're close to Fresno State, which is, arguably, I think, probably the best land surveying school. We do have quite a bit of students attend, and then young professionals as they're moving into their job after graduation. So I think I probably know quite a few more of the younger generation and up and coming people than maybe the average, just being so close to Fresno State. But I've really enjoyed how this work from home environment and these remote meetings has opened it up. And more people are willing to embrace, the fun happy hours or the mentoring Mondays. It's been refreshing because that didn't happen before. So I feel like that has really kind of kicked open the door to more connections. And I honestly think people are looking for that in a time when so many of us are social distancing. But also, I mean, for the younger professionals, many of us have young families too. So it's so much easier to hop on a 30-minute Zoom meeting than drive an hour to a chapter meeting or something. So it's made access a whole lot easier to connecting.
That's perfect. I mean, that to me captures the essence of really what our profession really needs to embrace, and open up to having these types of interactions, and not just say, well, if you're not in person or not sitting at the bar together, then it's
Good luck.
It's not the same. But
right.
And you're exactly right. It's to me, it's opening up the opportunities for, like you said, especially young professionals with young families that you just don't have the time. Seems like everything's so busy. So no, I appreciate that insight, because that's part of what I think the profession overall needs to adapt to the culture and the driving force of millennials and Gen Z of, this is how we're going to communicate. It's going to be video. It's going to be social media. Yes, there is a time and place for in-person things and social gatherings, but
I think we all look forward to that too once we can.
Yes, exactly. One final, I guess, parting shot. Do you have any advice for future surveyors?
Oh, yes. So I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was that, nobody's going to come, well, maybe, but odds are that nobody's going to come and pull you along, right? There are a ton of great mentors out there, but they're almost all so busy. But if you show you're willing to learn and you're going to ask questions, not be afraid to say, I don't know how to do this. Can I get some help? There are so many amazing mentors out there that will spend the time to lead and guide. It just takes, being a little humble, asking for that help, and not being afraid to bother somebody. Because sometimes, I know, this senior land surveyor is so busy, right? But 99% of the time, in my experience, when I've gone to that senior person, they have spent the time to teach and train, and you can almost tell that they enjoy it too. but they just don't have the time to necessarily reach out and say, hey, what do you want to learn?
Mm-hmm.
So take that first step. Don't be afraid. And you really drive your path. So like I said, don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, show you're interested, and I think they'll invest the time.
I'm telling you, she's well experienced for her age, people. This is
I've learned the hard way.
Oh no, Jocelyn, you know what? Thank you. Those are fantastic words, and you're exactly right that the older generation, I think, does have something they want to give back, but sometimes because of that, because we're busy, or basically the generational barriers, we don't break through, and we don't take the time to be able to do that because. It's time well spent as long as we make the time, and we need to make the time. So,
and I mean, everybody knows surveyors may not be the most social group, so they might feel like they're bothering you by reaching out and wanting to teach you something. So it goes both ways. Yes, but I think if the younger generation, the up and coming surveyors express their interest and desire to learn, it hasn't been too hard to find people willing to teach.
Those are very true words. I wholeheartedly agree. All right. Well, with that, we will we'll end this segment of Surveyor Says. And Jocelyn, thank you again for being our guest and sharing your words of wisdom. And we're going to hear more. I'm telling you, people, you're going to see more of this lady out there. She's going to be a driving force here. So.
Thank you, Tim.
Keep your eyes open. So, till next time, we'll see you. We've got a couple great episodes coming up. So please subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you. You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.